Hello and welcome back, Squirrel Nation. Today we're going to dive into a Veres guide. Yes, I am finally doing it. This guide was a little different. I actually made this guide live on stream. I will leave a link in the description to the full live stream video of us constructing this guide as a community. The second thing is I will leave a link to the infographic, which has 3 builds, 3 Arcana sets. If you're just interested in Veres build, go to that link. Anyways, with that said, let's dive in. So starting off, Veres is basically strong throughout the game. She doesn't really have spikes in power. She's just consistently a good hero. So that's enough for that. So weaknesses. Main things to keep in mind are Veres is squishy. She's micro-intensive. Micro-intensive means she requires a lot of skill shots. So you have to aim her S1, her S2, you have to hit them. If you do not hit her skill shots, you are not going to get the value that you should be getting out of Veres, and yeah, you're just basically not going to maximize her potential. Another thing to keep in mind because of this is ping. If you have high ping, Veres is probably not the hero you want to pick up because it's going to be a lot harder to hit skill shots and you're much more likely to do poorly with her. Last weakness of Veres is she has poor mobility. She's a slow hero. She can't roam very well compared to other DS side lane heroes. Okay, onto the strengths. She has great sustain because of the way her passive works. The lower health she is, the more lifesteal she gets from her passive, meaning she can always stay at a very comfortable point with life, okay? Melee bully, she is a great hero again to counter melee heroes because she has a longer range on her attack. Because of the way her kit works, she can knock you away, she can stun you, she can use her her passive to sustain herself. She does very good against side lane heroes who are melee based. CC immune, part of her passive is she is immune to CC, so that counts stuns, that counts all that other slows, all that good stuff. So if you get good at stacking her passive, you can actually get a lot of benefit from Veres' CC immunity. Finally, she's a strong team fighter. Because she does have good CC, she has 2 different skills for CC. She has her ultimate, her ultimate as kind of an execute if anybody gets really low. She can also use it to jump over walls to disengage or engage into fights. And then finally, she has her passive, which is the biggest component of her kit, which gives you tons of AoE true damage on a whole team, and it gives her lifesteal. So moving on to the countered by. Veres is countered by Florentino. 1 is because on his dash he has iframes, and 2, Veres can push heroes away, but Florentino can keep closing in on her because of his refresh with his flowers on his dash, and then also he's very burst damage. And as we mentioned, Veres is a squishy hero. She needs time to lifesteal, and that's why you'll see later in the video a lot of builds built Veres tanky. Moving on to Ryoma. Slightly different reason. Ryoma has a ton of burst damage, right? He also has his stun, so basically Ryoma can stun her, use his ultimate, and it's going to chunk down Veres, and he basically can outrange her with his skills. He is melee, so their auto attacks, Ryoma is closer range than Veres, but in terms of skills, Ryoma has a longer range than Veres, and he can just kind of bully her, and he's very strong early game. Marja is going to dominate her because Marja on the skills has a longer range with her S1, so she can bully Veres when she's clearing wave. And then also Veres can't really close the gap onto Marja. We talked about Veres doesn't have great mobility, so she doesn't have a good way to close the gap on Marja and get damage. Finally, when Veres goes for her passive or she tries to drop her combo, Marja can just use her ultimate to get away because of that invulnerability. And yeah, it's just not a good matchup. So on to the heroes that Veres does well against. Veres does very well against Zenial because Zenial needs to be inside the minion wave to clear it. So what Zenial's going to do, he's going to use his shield, he's going to maybe use his stun, but most likely just shield. He's going to go into the minion wave, auto attack, use the shield, clear the wave, right? Wrong against Veres because now Veres can land her S2, S1 combo and then follow it up with her passive, which is going to break Zenial's shield, which means then he's not even going to have the AoE damage from his shield, and it's just not a good match for Zenial. Furthermore, Zenial wants to go with those really nice ultimates to get into team fights and everything, and well, Veres has a stun, which means she can cancel out his ultimate, so Zenial just has a rough time against Veres. Arthur, once again, Arthur is one of those melee heroes. We said Veres does very good against melee. If you think about Arthur's kit, he has a gap closer, and he has his AoE damage around him, and then his melee, his auto attack is melee. So Veres with her S2 can push Arthur back. So if Arthur uses his gap closing, his S1 to close in on her, she can simply push him back, then S2 and stun him, and he just can't get close enough to do damage to her, and then she can always be auto-attacking him from range and getting her passive and consistently chipping him down. It's going to be very hard for him to clear wave or engage on Veres without taking a significant amount of poke damage. Astrid is basically the same thing. Her kit is just not good for countering Veres. I'm not going to keep going through it, but it's the same reason that Zenial and Arthur have issue against her. Veres can keep Astrid at a safe distance and just continually chip away, chip away, chip away. Okay, on to the builds. We got 3 builds. So one build is the #1 Veres on the Thai server. He is a, she is a master player with 3 king seals. So consistent master player on Thai server. I believe it had a 62% win rate. And this is also the build that Dowser uses. Dowser, if you don't know, is a Thai streamer content creator who is extremely popular, probably actually the largest AoV content creator, but Thais call it ROV. Anyways, so this build, you can read the description, but it's good for anti-auto attack tanks because of the Frost Cape is going to slow people down. The reason I say anti-auto attack is because it takes sonic boots, so it's going to be minimizing the auto attack damage. The Frost Cape is good with Veres because it slows people down. Slow heroes are easier to hit with her passive. They're easier to land skill shots on. Like we said, Veres is micro intensive, so anything you can do to make it easier for Veres to land skill shots is going to help her. Medallion Troy is simply tankiness for magic damage. And then here's the interesting thing is the Fenrir's. That is an execute item. When enemies are low health, you do a lot more damage to them. And Veres, keep in mind, her passive is true damage. So if you notice, this first build has no armor penetration, and it's not needed because this first build is focusing on using Veres' passive. That's why you're building very tanky, you're slowing down the enemy, and so you're gonna, the idea of this is basically you're gonna slow down the enemy, you're gonna keep auto-attacking, keep using your S2, S1, and just consistently using your passive again and again. And then when it has very low health enemies, you can use your ultimate in conjunction with your passive and Fenrir's, and you are just going to absolutely melt, execute enemies. Okay, anyways, the next build is from Darkbreaker. I'm not sure where he got this, but this is his build. This is another... You can see that basically he keeps the Fenrir's, he keeps the Frost Cape, but he switches for Odin's Will and Gaia's. Gaia's is simply a cheaper version of Troy, but it gives you same thing, magic, resistance, and health, but it doesn't give you that shield. And then Odin's is good if you're staying in a fight long, because when you're taking damage, you're doing more and you're getting the speed up. So once again, if Veres is fast, it's easier to land her passive. So that's the idea. The Mail of Pain here is a good anti-burst, anti-marksman type of item because it ends up reflecting a lot of damage back onto marksmen, back onto assassins. And Veres, we said, is squishy at first, and her weakness is getting bursted down before she can use her passive, before she can throw out her abilities. So I think that's why Darkbreaker goes for that. And finally, the last build is from Narumi. He is one of the Squirrel Nation community members who is playing with us in stream. He is a Masters player from NA, and this is the build that he enjoys on Veres. I'm not going to go over it as much. We've already talked about it. The interesting thing is he switches out Fenrir's for Muramasa. We talked about Veres has a lot of true damage for her passive. So this build, you would not be focusing as much on your passive as you are focusing on your auto attack. And I think he just enjoys the more damage from auto attacking than using the passive. But anyways, try all 3 builds. I did not rank these builds because I have not personally had the time to put the amount of games I need on these builds to decide my ranking. So I don't want to say what the ranking is, but all of these are definitely viable builds. I would try them out. And another note is if you notice all 3 Arcana sets are different, try the different Arcana sets, okay? The last one, Indomitable Benevolent Skewer, that's a tankier Arcana set. You're going very tanky. Darkbreaker's Arcana set, you're going for more damage. Gorilla's going to give you attack speed and mobility. And then the tie number 1, you see that you're getting 10 Assassinate. So there, you're giving up the attack speed, and you're going for more attack damage early. I think that's for wave clear, basically. Early, you want to have that nice wave clear, and you can also see that he takes 5 Indomitable just to be a little more tanky instead of the Onslaught. But anyways, that's enough for the builds. Hero synergies. So there's basically 3 types. There's other heroes that Veres synergizes with, but we want to discuss these 3 because they are good examples of different type of synergies that Veres has. So Yebnith synergizes with Veres because Veres has lots of AoE true damage. Yebnith clumps, he groups up enemies into tight quarters so that Veres can then hit them all with her passive. So that is why Yebnith does very well. Alice does very well because Alice's kit helps Veres stay alive, okay? Veres wants to be in the enemy team, but at the same time, she's squishy. She needs time to get her passive off, to get her life steal, to get her cycle of skill shots and passive usage out. And Alice helps her do that. Alice has a shield to shield Veres and also speed boost. And once again, if the Veres is sped up, it's easier for her to land skill shots. It's easier for her to land the passive on more enemies. Secondly, Alice has her ultimate, which is a huge CC slow to the enemy team and also silences them. Heroes who are silenced cannot burst down Veres, right? So your assassins, they want to dive in. Your mages, they want to dive in with all their skill shots. They can't do that if they are silenced from Alice's ult. So like we said, it gives Veres that timing to get in there and get her burst damage out before the enemy team. And finally, Alice has a nice stun that once again can buy Veres time. It can just help her engage the front line without melting. Finally, the third type of synergy that Veres has is an execution type of ability. So if you imagine Veres dives into the enemy team, she throws out her combo, S2, S1, she gets her passive, she chunks down, let's say 3 or 4 enemies, right? They're getting very low, and then now Thane comes in with his AoE execute ultimate, and most of them are going to die. Those that don't die are now susceptible to Veres to ult on to the ones who try to run away, and remember, her ult is a gap closer, it's an execute type of ability, so that is why Thane works with her. Once again, there's other heroes that synergize. I just wanted to give 3 examples of hero play styles that synergize well with Veres. Okay, final slide. What to practice? Veres has a lot of things to practice. The other heroes you've noticed have, some of the lists are shorter, some are longer. Veres is a hard hero to play. She's not easy, so there's a lot of things to practice. So first thing, stacking your passive. You need to know how many stacks come from each skill. S1, you get 2 stacks if you hit both of the fangs. S2, you get 2 stacks, and every auto attack gives you 1 stack. Ultimate gives you no stacks, okay? You need to know that. 4 stacks equals your passive takes off. So, if you look down at D, the most basic Veres combo is S2, which pushes or pulls the enemy to a very particular range. Then you S1, which when it hits both fangs, it's going to stun them. And then that's already 4 stacks. S2, 2 stacks, S1, 2 stacks. Bam, your passive goes off. You hit them with your passive. Keep in mind, as all you have to do to land this combo is hit your S2. If you hit your S2, your S1 and your passive will automatically hit, okay? So you hit your S2, it's gonna put the enemy at the perfect distance for you to land your S1 to stun them, and then before the stun wears off, your passive is going to trigger. So S2, S1, stay there, bam, you hit the passive, and then keep fighting on, keep your auto attacks going, okay? But anyways, so practice stacking your passive, become very adept at stacking your passive, okay? Landing your passive efficiently, what I mean by this is you need to get enemies in the sweet spot of your passive. Get a feel for when they're inside the circle and when they're outside of the circle, okay? So on the leading edge, the in front of the ult, but also on the inner edge, which is towards you. So don't let enemies get too close to you that they don't get hit, and don't let enemies get too far away that they don't get hit. So practice that. The last thing that's outside of combos is ult, okay? The ult can be an engage, disengage tool, and make sure you land your ult. The ult has a very awkward hitbox, so make sure you're playing around with it in trial or practice mode and just kind of turn off cooldowns and start spamming the ult and get a feel for where you can hit the ult, where you can't hit the ult. Also, practice using the ult to hop over walls. So for instance, one is the mid lane. You can jump those mid lane walls. That does matter because, like we said, Veres is squishy, getting in position with your ultimate. Sometimes your ultimate is just used to simply get good position. You don't need to use it to get damage off. Okay. The combo D we already talked about. So finally, we'll move on to the ultimate combo. This is, I would only worry about this once you have become very comfortable with Veres. So what I mean, you want to preload your passive and you want to get to 3 stacks, okay? So you're going to preload passive, get to 3 stacks, and then you're going to ult onto the enemy. That's going to be big damage. Then you're going to auto attack. Okay, so now you're at 4 stacks, right? So you were at 3, you ult, you auto attack. There's 4 stacks, so your passive triggers. You hit the enemy with your passive. Keep in mind, when you hit them with your passive, your cooldown is going to be reduced. So now you hit them with your S2, S1 combo. So then you get them there, you stun them, you hit that passive, right? And then now you get a second round of cooldown reduction, which also is going to result in your ultimate being back up. So this is how you can actually do this combo and get 2 ultimates on the enemy. There is almost no enemy who's going to live through this. Veres has enough damage where this is going to wreck them, and the ultimate does have an execution function. And especially if you have already finished your Fenrir's, you can see kind of now you should understand why Fenrir's works very well with Veres. Anyways, that does it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. It is something new to try. For those of you who have not, if you're interested in building one of these guides with me on Sunday stream, check out my Twitch. Follow it, turn on notifications. I will leave the links below. For those of you new to the Squirrel Nation YouTube channel, definitely subscribe, turn on notifications. And yeah, as always, happy ranking, take care, and I'll see you next time.